you amazing, beautiful people, and welcome back to another solo leveling cut content reaction video from the one and only, the amazing AniNews. Honestly, AniNews' series is just absolutely amazing. Huge shout out that guy. Every single video he has uploaded around the new season of solo leveling has been 10 out of 10. Getting to I feel like it really helps you enjoy the show as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm already loving the anime so much. Season 2 has cooked so hard so far. We've already watched 4 episodes. I feel like it just gets more and more hype every single time I press play on a Saturday's episode. But having the extra cut content or details that we may have missed or that the anime didn't have time to include really just makes it that much more fun. So, shout out AniNews. Link to his episode 3 cut content video is, of course, in the description. So go support him. Please like this video. Please subscribe for more as well. We're so close to 50,000 subscribers now. So close. Let's see if we can get over that milestone. Without more talking from me, let's jump into my first time ever reaction to Solo Leveling Season 2 Episode 3's cut content.
If they're gonna skip all this and give us this instead, then I guess in the end we're coming out at about even. It also gives me a lot to talk about, so if you want to see the full extent of Sung's power leveling in the Tower Dungeon, the hectic inter-guild politics going on in the background, then the expansion of the world to a more international level, stick around because we'll be covering all that and more.
Episode 3 is the one that people said left out the most content from the book.
Everything the anime left out from the novel and manhwa. Let's get started. Episode 15. Still a long way to go. Covering chapters 56 to 61 from the manhwa and chapters 65 to 75 from the novel. To start things off right after the Red Gate, there was a whole cutscene where Miss Park was debriefing with Beck and Dawn. She was basically describing everything she saw as best as she could remember. Things like how Sung would do push-ups in the middle of the night, all the way to his ability to use spatial magic and his conflict with Kim. It's
interesting that she mentioned the push-ups because we haven't seen him do any of his daily exercises that obviously he's supposed to be doing. But it's also kind of interesting that the system makes sure that he keeps up with that. Because obviously it's something you don't really think about. The fact that Sung Jin-woo is so damn shredded and fit and everything like that, you just assume a lot of it comes from his stats. But he had to improve his fitness to begin with, you know? And obviously he's still doing that daily, so that's kind of interesting.
Most importantly was his ability to control dozens of summons, but the most unbelievable thing was the fact that he cleared this Red Gate all by himself. Yes, he did have his summons to help him, but as soldiers deriving from his very own skill set, it was still technically him doing the dungeon solo.
I agree, that counts.
This was a feat truly unfathomable, since even for an S-rank hunter like himself, Beck knew on his own all he could do was just barely solo a B-rank dungeon. It was news that all but confirmed that Sung had reawakened, and with an incredibly rare skill on top of that.
Beck could barely solo a B-rank dungeon, but he could do it, but it was difficult for him. We just saw Jin-woo want to wander off to fight an A-rank boss. Now we know that all S-ranks are different in terms of strength, you know? That one S-rank could be 10 times stronger than another S-rank, you know? That's interesting.
It was already rare for a hunter to control any summons, so to control tens of them, well, that was, as I said, unbelievable.
Look at his smiling face, man.
It was actually a skill no one thought to have even been possible. Not Beck
his
or
army's
his extensive
so
connection to
cool
hunters
now.
Across the globe either. This then begs the question of how much money Sung is worth, which, as unthinkable as it was to consider, his value would only skyrocket the moment he was reassessed properly. That being the case, Beck knew he needed to recruit Sung before that. It was the only way to recoup their losses from the Red Gate. It was here Miss Park would express her interest in joining their efforts, since as the person who spent the most time with Sung, she believed her familiarity would prove useful.
Probably not.
I mean, she did after all spend a week with him.
Yeah,
she was
but
also
he's
by
a bit
conventional standards quite attractive, so Beck and Dawn figured that could come into play as well.
True,
Her only request in return was to be able to be in his raid party every single time no matter what. Reason being that her time in the Red Gate showed her just how powerless she really was. She had essentially learned the lesson that Sung was trying to teach Song-yi. As much as that fear made her want to run away though, Miss Park didn't want to give up all the luxuries that came with being a B-rank hunter. The money and societal benefits were just too great to pass up.
She's a genius! Wait, was that her? In episode 1? It looks like her, same color eyes. The one in the street who... Was that her? Man, fucking hell. Anyway, right. That's genius. Because she can basically be like, no matter where Jinwoo goes, I will always be there with him. Which is dangerous, you know, because you're going to be in, like, the hardest dungeons. But if Jinwoo's there, maybe she feels so confident that he will protect her that she can get, like... It's like having a fucking amazing player on your team, you know? You're just going to let him run off and solo everybody and win the level for you, you know? That's what she's basically thinking with Jinwoo, and then she can get some of the rewards.
Not to mention
Genius.
all the public
I love
recognition, too. So, what better way to remove the high-risk factor making her ideal job so dangerous than to do raids with the man who could solo a red gate?
Yeah,
Just as how he kept his
fucking
promise to
genius. I love her. That's
Miss
a
Park
smart
wanted
move.
that same promise to be made to her. Just thinking about it made her heart flutter. So, this was how Miss Park ended up working with On, since at the end of the day, the request wasn't all that difficult. Beck would then ask On for Sung's phone number, but not for the reason that you might think. You see, where On believed Beck was gonna rush things and force Sung away from the guild, he instead stated it was only to thank Sung properly. After thinking more about what Sung had done for them, Beck realized Sung didn't just save the lives of his guildmates. He had also ensured the guild's honor wasn't tarnished with a dungeon break.
True,
Sung
yeah.
had saved their public image from some very harsh criticism, and that made Beck realize just how regretful his actions were here. It was a good enough reason for On-
Oh shit, based on, literally, not even joking, based on Beck feeling like that, changes my opinion on Beck. Even though I already liked Beck, I feel like Beck has got like a good energy about him. I like him a bit more now.
To give Beck Sung's number, but right as he was about to, he would pause because Miss Park was trying to copy it herself.
Ha!
Whether she succeeded or not is unknown, but it is implied that she may have gotten her hands on it.
That's hilarious.
This brings us now to a scene with the Hunters Guild, where Choi would be now learning of the Red Gate incident himself. How did he come across such confidential information? Well, it was standard practice for every guild to have 1 or 2 informants within the association.
Yeah,
it was by far the best way to stay ahead of the competition. Now, I won't dive too deep into the reaction to the peculiar information that was leaked to them, but the gist is that they knew the White Tiger Guild was hiding something. I mean, even the association knew they were as well. The only reason the association didn't probe further was because the fault of the Red Gate was solely theirs. It would be far too bold to demand information for an incident that they caused in the first place. Either way, the ranks of the survivors who made it out the Red Gate made it abundantly clear that there was someone else present. Someone powerful the White Tiger Guild was trying to hide. This was a person Choi knew he needed to recruit himself, but unless he knew who that person was, Choi was unfortunately stuck.
Which also explains why he was
Choi
so
figured the best way to find out who this
and
person
hot-headed in episode
was
4.
to make the situation as chaotic as possible. He would leak the Red Gate incident to the media, then force the White Tiger Guild into a situation where hiding the truth just wasn't possible anymore.
It's
A
also
relentless
genius,
bombardment from the media was sure to uncover any secrets that they were hiding. Switching over to the dungeon with
All
Jinho
this stuff
now,
is like
at
really
this
smart,
point,
and they
Sung
leave it
was
all
level
out. It's a bit of a
60.
shame.
Him and his shadows could clear a C-rank dungeon in no time at all, so it was decided 4 more raids would be done today, while the last 5 would be completed tomorrow. That's when their dinner would be had too, bringing an end to what Sung believed was a relationship built on pure transaction. Jinho's heartfelt spiel made it clear it wasn't, but for the longest time, Sung didn't even think that he was gonna get the building out of it. To him, that was just a bonus if he did. The only thing that mattered during were his levels. It was after gaining them that Sung saw zero need to continue the relationship, but Jinho's confession changed that. The two would then bond over their conversation, all while an interesting news report would be going on in the background. It was a press conference with Beck, showing him trying his best to limit the amount of information that got out about the Red Gate. It seems Choi's plan got him right where he wanted him, and Beck was struggling to keep up with it all. The most he could do was deny any interviews to the survivors of the Red Gate. That, and keep any questions of a mystery person to a minimum. Moving on to the incident in America now, it turns out not a single month.
God, there was so much in episode 3, wasn't there? Like, now I think about it, episode 3 had so much. It didn't feel fast-paced, though. I mean, it did a little bit, but honestly, as an anime-only viewer, not that much. Not noticeable, you know? I can imagine if you're, like, a fan of the novels and the books, you might be thinking, like, this is quite, like, fast-paced. But I also haven't seen anyone who's fans of the books say, like, it feels rushed in a bad way. Like everyone, like from what I'm seeing, most people are like quite happy with the direction Solo Leveling is going, and just a bit sad that it's missing out some stuff, but still happy with how it's going. You know, like bittersweet. It's like, oh yeah, it's doing really well and it's very fun to watch. It's just a shame that this got missed out. That's what it kind of feels like. You know?
Monster was present in the A rank dungeon Ilhuan was found in. The reason the gate emitted such high magical energy then was because Ilhuan's presence alone emitted an amount exceeding an A rank dungeon. His aura was stronger than that of the entire dungeon combined, an unprecedented level of power for any person. America's reaction to him was actually fairly standard then, since if this was a monster feigning the memories of a human, then the risk he posed was enough to endanger all of Washington. That's when Huang Dong-su would come in to interrogate, followed by
a monster with the could be pretending to have the memories of a human. It's not something I even thought of, but what if he is a monster?
a bit of backstory
I hadn't thought that
behind
until
why
now. What if
he's
he
so
actually is?
sadistic. You see, after losing his parents in a dungeon break many years ago, all he had was his older brother. When he awakened as an S rank sometime after, Huang Dong-su knew this was his opportunity to get revenge. He could use his power to kill as many monsters as he wanted. This is why his glare hair is much more intense than usual, since everything aside from Ilhuan's appearance clearly indicated that he was a monster. Like, even if you set aside the fact that he came from a dungeon, the magic energy Ilhuan emitted was identical to one. It was despite all that, though, that Huang's first question would actually be a personal one.
That's interesting.
It was likely for the sake of his brother, since what he wanted to know was if it was possible for other people to return from the dungeon.
I do find it curious because I was wondering why he was so hell-bent on, like, this guy is a monster. And I honestly thought he was just being arrogant, you know, and, like, naive. You know, he's, like, really angry this guy beat him, so he's just saying he's a monster. And that's what I assumed he was doing. But it turns out the energy he was giving off actually implied that he was one. So that's interesting. And that makes all of his character... See, this is what I mean. That makes his decision-making in the last episode, where he's hell-bent on saying he's a monster, that makes that saying make so much more sense.
This was unfortunately a question Ilhuan could only shake his head to, since the reason he came back was very specific. He didn't explain how that was, but he did make it clear for other hunters it wouldn't be possible. Now, when asked what exactly this great calamity was, Ilhuan refused to go into specifics about it. The only thing he could say was that he alone was strong enough to stop it. It was a confident statement which would lead Huang to ask just how strong he was. Ilhuan could only agree that he did have power, but couldn't describe more other than the fact that he had other factors working in his favor too.
The
So,
system!
while this was confidence
gotta be the
which went
system!
to mildly infuriate Huang, Ilhuan's hunter history confirmed it. His track record in the dungeons was fairly impressive despite there not being a ranking system back then. Looking deeper into his file revealed who Ilhuan's family was, and that led to the whole fight we saw in the anime.
Okay.
The one thing you do need to remember though is that in the novels, Huang hasn't yet left for Korea. That being the case, he doesn't know Sung was trapped in a red gate, and he doesn't imply Sung is dead already. What he does imply is that he's going to kill Sung, a message Ilhuan obviously didn't take too kindly. Switching back to the restaurant, Sung would notice the Red Gate incident was all over the news now.
It's interesting how the anime decided to randomly send him to Korea, only to send him straight back to America. You know, it's almost like they just wanted that interaction outside the gate, which, to be honest, it was actually like a good scene, but it's such a random decision for the anime to make, like, because it's not a necessary scene, but it is curious.
It was that and the identity of the mysterious person who allegedly beat it. It was pretty crazy to see how many people were trying to find information on him, but Sung honestly didn't really care anymore.
He doesn't.
If they did, then he wouldn't be as bothered as you might think. Reason being that at this point, he'd already reached the level he was striving for. He had only hid his abilities before to keep them from being taken advantage of. Now that he could hold his own, Sung didn't care who it was that knew about him now. Sung would then give Jinho an elixir to sober him up, part ways at the restaurant, then prep himself for his week-long adventure in the tower dungeon. Fast forward past some new scenes for sister leveling, and that's when we get to a cutscene involving him getting into the dungeon.
I love how everyone is so, like, clued up on sister leveling at this point. Honestly, the sister leveling reactions, I can't wait to do season 2. Season 2, like, is obviously ongoing now, but when it's finished, I'll do, like, a video where I check them all out. I'm not going to update it. The reactions, my reaction did pretty well. Like, Honestly, though, it's really ruined. It's fucking ruined my Jinwoo and Jinna relationship now. I can't see them together anymore. It's ruined it.
You see, where before it was night and there weren't that many people, now it was daytime and people were everywhere. That being the case, it would be a bit weird for Sung to just open up a portal and disappear right in front of them. So, Sung would use his stealth skill, shimmy to a place a bit more discreet, bump into a few people along the way, then make his way in completely unnoticed. Something Sung had noticed himself, though, was that despite making physical contact with several people, not a single person noticed he was there. Stealth had made him imperceptible to even touch. It's from this that Sung now understood why high-level assassin hunters needed to be closely monitored, since stealth skills like this were very easily abusable.
Yeah, especially
now,
in the real
it was
world.
Upon re-entry into the tower dungeon that the lack of—
That's something you don't really think about either. If any of these hunters, like the stronger ones, sort of went rogue, they could just take out like political leaders of like the world, you know? Especially assassins, which obviously makes sense to the statement we just heard, because high-level assassins can't even be perceived at all by even touch. Meaning that if one of them went rogue, it would be like the freaking opening scene in X-Men 2.
of another Cerberus revealed this was a dungeon that operated a bit differently. Whereas in the instance dungeons monsters respawned, it seemed that here they didn't. So whatever this was, it was clear it was going to be something new for Sung. A fact further indicated by the hefty rewards waiting for him at the end of it. When Sung saw what could be earned from the quest alone, the plus 20 in bonus stats were enough to make the entire thing worth it. It was a heaven-sent gift he planned to put straight into intelligence, a means to solve his mana problems all at once. The undisclosed reward was sure to be good too, but any single item from the shop provided value in the billions. With items there worth hundreds of billions in gold, his measly 430,000 didn't seem like that much of a problem anymore. Of course, the requirement to earn these was going to be tough, since 10,000 demon souls would be lengthy even with his army of 50 shadow soldiers. Fortunately, failure would just mean he'd only lost time, so in comparison to the other quests where failure meant death, this was much more lenient than those. Now, one last difference that needs to be noted is the addition of an experience counter telling him how much XP he needs to level up. The counter only existed within the dungeon itself, but it did make it easy to keep track of how fast he was leveling. It was while Sung was familiarizing himself with the dungeon that a post-interview scene would be shown with Beck. He had just finished his run with the press and was now on the receiving end of a phone call from an S-rank hunter in Japan. It was the retired Korean hunter Min. He was in Japan due to their request, specifically because they were looking for someone who participated in the Jeju raids. As for why, well, that's because an ant with wings washed up on their shore. This is where the involvement of other nations starts to become more prevalent, bringing into question how the anime is going to portray it. I mean, they've already introduced the mutated ant in the anime, so technically this whole scene isn't even needed. That said, I'd be very surprised if they cut out all the Japan stuff completely. Now,
I find it so interesting that the ants have made, like, there's obviously a big deal about the ants, you know? And I like how solo leveling has done it, because it's not something you see in anime, but it's something you see a lot in TV. And what I mean by that is, in anime, it's very rare, it's like 50-50 to have like a story, like a main story sort of in the background that you come back to. You know, like usually the main story is the main story, and we hear it a lot, and it's the main focus. And then the characters will go off on side quests and different things, and then come back to the main story, you know? But it's rare to do the opposite, where each episode sort of funnels like what would be perceived as the main story, but then the ants feel like the main story. Like, I feel like that's truly the big boss, you know? And the fact that he keeps getting like hinted and mentioned just as we go through reminds me of shows like Stargate or something like that, you know? We'd have 3 episodes that was self-contained, but then they'd mention something. And then that would like be a jigsaw piece. It's like a puzzle, and then 3 episodes later, they'd add another jigsaw piece. And eventually, they have the completed puzzle, and they'd go this way and do, like, that main quest. You know what I mean? And it kind of feels like that was solo leveling in the ants. And the reason I'm saying this as well is because the ants I find so interesting. Because they're just ants. But they are supposed to be so strong that they just abandoned the damn island, and now they're flying. And also, I don't really know how dungeons work fully. But if they've left it alone for this long, is it not even stronger? You know? Like, they attacked it and then left it and decided to quarantine it. But now it's been years since anyone's been to that island. So surely that island is now even stronger and has even more monsters than it did before. Meaning that because they've left it alone, it should eventually get to a point where you just can't even defeat the island. Is that how a dungeon works? Or is it like is there a capacity? You know? Like, can it not go above a certain level?
The anime skipped through quite a few of the lower floors, but to give an idea of what Sung was going through, he was extremely ecstatic since this was the most efficient level farm since the subway dungeon.
I wish they
Not
showed
only
that a
was
little
he
bit
getting
more, because
experience,
the
but
anime's
also plenty of
the anime really seems to just make Sung Jin Woo look like emotionless, like most of the time. And so many people in my comment section will always say in the books he's not emotionless, like he is like quite not emotional, but he's normal. But the anime seems to have just like turned him into this like just ice guy, you know. And I do see a lot of people say like that they don't really know why the anime's done that, because he does like have like moments. And I feel like episode 4 showed that a little bit more, but it would be fun to see him be a bit more just like emotive.
Drops too. There was numerous loot that could be sold to the store for hundreds of thousands of gold apiece. Initially, he wasn't very sure where to go, but after seeing the pillar of light in the distance, Sung hopped on Tank and rode him all the way there. As for why he chose the name Tank, it was simply because the bear was as big as a tank. It was once at the pillar of light that the whole thing was revealed to be just one giant magical elevator. Sung could access any floor from it, so long as he used a permit to unlock it. It made it so whether it was the 100th or 1st floor, every floor was connected by the same pillar of light. So these lower floors granted him levels far faster than the C-rank dungeons, since where 9 C-rank dungeons were required to gain just 1 level, only 4 hours here gained him the same. He was essentially climbing to the upper echelons of the S-rank now. How did Sung know he was at the S-rank? Well, when he met Beck, he knew right then and there that he had just barely reached the S-rank. He wouldn't have been able to brush him off like this if he hadn't. 2 days of grinding got him to floor 27, where the demons now gave 300 XP apiece and his soul count was sitting at 2100. He was also at level 67, so to say he was satisfied—
Are we saying that— Oh my god, Jinwoo must be so fucking strong now. We're saying that when Jinwoo left the red gate, he was the bottom of S rank. And then he went in here and did 75 floors. And even AniNews is saying Jinwoo somewhere in the upper echelons of S rank. No shit! No shit! I did not even comprehend just how strong Jinwoo until that statement.
With his growth would be an understatement. It was by now that Sung had noticed each floor was modeled after a different city too, but with the destruction getting worse the higher he got, it became increasingly difficult to recognize which city it was.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, here on the 27th, the whole thing just looked like it had been carpet bombed. There was no day or night cycle either, so Sung could only rely on his watch to keep time. He would usually stop his grind at around 11 PM or so, this time dazing off to sleep while wishing Jinho luck with his negotiations. Both the novel and manhwa portray this conversation a bit differently, since the way Jinho's dad found out about Sung was actually through the direct testimony of a Redgate survivor. It's how Jinho found out Sung was involved in it too. After hearing all those news broadcasts regarding this mystery person, Jinho finally pieced together that that mystery person was Sung. This led Jinho to believe his negotiations were over, since after hearing the hunter describe just how powerful Sung was, there was no doubt his dad would think he cheated. His dad's reaction was actually the opposite though, since he was just happy his son went into the dungeon with a plan. It was also incredibly convenient that a man so useful to him just so happened to be in arm's reach now. All of it turned out to be a shock, especially the response in which Jinho couldn't confidently say he could recruit Sung. Unlike how in the anime he did, here he could only say that he would try. It was a response that really resonated with his dad, since there would be no meaning to the challenge if it was too easy. In the end, his dad couldn't help but smile, since the son he previously thought was just a kitten turned out to be a tiger cub after all. Never did he think Jinho would be so daring. So the smile was a rare—
It's a shame they didn't show this a little bit more, because I always say that anime has a tendency to showcase father-son or father-daughter relationships. Shit. Fathers and dads in anime are just portrayed as the shittest human beings ever. All the fucking time. In 90% of the time, they're just not good dads. And then 10% of the time we get the rare cases where like, you know, Dr. Stone, Kaguya-sama, we get these rare cases where you're like, a cool dad. And it honestly feels like if we saw this scene, it would have shown their relationship like quite nicely. But in the anime, they decided, fuck that, and they just got rid of it.
Never did he think Jinho would be so daring. So the smile was a rare occurrence.
Well, they didn't get rid of it because it was still a nice bonding moment, like we're talking about the smile and everything like that. But they did mitigate it a little bit.
For the man known across Korea as Poker Face, famed for never showing any emotion whatsoever. In the manhwa, an additional challenge was given to Jinho alongside this, since the guild would only be his if he could recruit Sung before his father could recruit his own S ranks. We already know he was going for Cha, but what we don't see is that he's also going for Min, the retired hunter who Jinho's father believes to be coming out of retirement. Since he had retired due to failing all 3 of the Jeju raid attempts before, it was more than likely that he would return for the 4th. So, with another raid likely happening in a few months, Jinho's dad figured he might like to do so as the leader of his own guild. It made this essentially a race to see who would come first. Would Cha or Min succumb to the grand offer presented to them, or would Jinho be able to pull Sung before that? The loser gives up the guild to the winner. Switching back to the dungeon, and Sung would be at 450 now. He was 4,388 souls into his quest, and another 2 levels higher at 69. Though the levels were running a bit slower now.
Nice.
The single day spent acquiring this was still far faster than anything he'd been doing before.
He's an addict.
A copious amount of items were dropping as well, all of which he was collecting and selling to the store immediately after. Where 3 days ago he was only at 430,000 gold, now he was sitting at 914 million.
Fuck me!
Soon he could buy whatever S-rank weapon and armor he wanted.
Jesus, but he gets to pick one item anyway.
Vulcan, which, while for the most part was the same, a couple details need to be explained to provide better context. An attack was actually blocked by Iron during Vulcan's initial assault, but the attack had shattered both his arms in the process. It was a good contrast to show how strong Sung is in comparison to his shadows, since Sung was able to tank all of Vulcan's attacks. This was with Vulcan's rage skill increasing all his stats by 50% too, so as far as powerful bosses go, this one was probably one of Sung's toughest. It just didn't seem that way because he's leveled up so much. When Vulcan predicted Sung's attack here, it was actually a pure gamble to use Ruler's Reach in response. Whereas the only other option was to just take the hit head on, Sung hoped Ruler's Touch would absorb some of the recoil and soften the blow. It was a clever way of getting out of an otherwise undodgeable situation. In the end, it wasn't one attack that killed Vulcan, but rather a series of consecutive fatal strikes after this one. There was genuine fear in Vulcan's eyes as it happened, because the bug he'd just been hunting with excitement had now turned the tables on him. The end result was 72 souls and 150k experience, resulting in a whole 2 levels just from that. The drops were exactly at—
One thing that is being interesting at the moment is how they are showcasing the monsters, you know? Like we just heard, fear in Vulcan's eyes. And we saw them before with like the glitch and stuff like that. There is more going on that we don't know about, and I love that.
As we saw as well, so with the earrings giving plus 20 to strength and plus 20 to health, Sung was ecstatic at what was pretty much 8 level ups worth of stats. There was a funny cutscene right after this though, involving Igris and how he's constantly collecting demon heads and presenting it to him. Sung only saw this as a minor annoyance, but the bigger annoyance was the fact that Iron was trying to copy him. Somehow when no one was looking, Iron had cut off Vulcan's head and dragged it to Sung as well. It wasn't even his kill to begin with, but because Igris was doing it, Iron felt he had to do it better.
Amazing.
Now, aside from another cutscene where Sung tests the Orb of Avarice, that's pretty much it for this episode. So all in all, it was quite a lot. Some big scenes, some small scenes, but each building the world and characters into something more. There was actually quite a bit more than I thought there would be. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you liked what you saw, then be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time though, ciao. Listen.
Honestly, AniNews is absolutely crushing it with these videos. I can't compliment the channel enough. It's one of my favorite freaking channels on YouTube at the moment. How fucking interesting, man. How fucking interesting. There's so many things to like think about now. First is Jeju Island with the ants, and and the potential of like these S ranks being or like all coming back, you know? We're noticing all these different S ranks from different places sort of turning up. We've got the father and son gamble that they're going on and how they want Jinwoo in their guild, but their guild isn't one of the big five, is it? Or is it? And now that's going on. And then we also have like the other guilds all wanting Jinwoo, which obviously now we know from the anime seeing episode 4. And now he's like got his ranking out in public as well. That's going to be interesting because everyone's just going to be competing for him. And then we got other things with his leveling system, because before he went into that dungeon, he was lower S, and then 75 levels later, it really does. 75 levels later, he's now out. How fucking strong is he? You know, like considering Beck was like, oh damn, I'm gonna lose an arm against this guy. If Beck met Jinwoo now, would he be like, this guy would chop my head off if he blinked? Which I find curious as well, because I feel like we're getting to a point where it's just like Jinwoo is just gonna be the guy, you know? And I love his like crazy addictive personality to just wanting to level up. Bro is like the ultimate gamer in real life. And it's gonna be really curious to see how that like develops going forward, especially now with like the different dungeons and what is going on. What is like the big story? Because the system obviously just caters itself to Jinwoo, you know? It feels like every time, like, do you know what, actually? For me, the random scene in the anime where the crazy angry guy, we'll call him Red Shirt. When Red Shirt turned up to kill Jinwoo in the anime that wasn't in the books, that scene for me feels like a showcase of the system working in Jinwoo's favor, you know? Because he goes into this gate, and at that point, if the gate didn't close, and it was a normal gate, he probably would have died. Either that, or he would, like, the whole city would have been destroyed. Maybe Beck would have protected him. Who knows what would have happened, right? But I can guess at that moment in time that Jinwoo was not strong enough to take on Red Shirt. However, the gate then turned to a red gate. Jinwoo then got to level up, get iron, come out, and at that point, I feel like maybe if he like bumped heads, because he was a lower S at this point, bumped heads with Red Shirt again, he would have a better chance at living. So it almost felt like the system was like, he's gonna die, let's save him. Red gate, level up, boom. Now you're capable to win that fight, you know? That's what it felt like to me. Obviously, that scene wasn't even in the book, so I guess we just have to leave it open to interpretation because there's no way of knowing what that scene actually means. Maybe there is a way and I'm just completely wrong, but I kind of like that theory and idea, especially considering that's kind of what it feels like now. The system is constantly giving Jinwoo like things he doesn't know he needs until he knows he needed it, you know? Like now he's going into the dungeon, he's strong enough to do it, he got 75 levels, he's now in the upper echelons of S rank. Why? I guess we'll find out. Is all of this centered around Jeju Island? Is there something more significant to that island that we don't know about yet? Is it something more related to his dad? Or is it something just specifically related to the system itself? Or does the system need Jinwoo to be on the system's side? And the system is turning Jinwoo into the system's bodyguard. Something along those lines, you know? And what is the system? And how, like, all of this stuff going on? Because if you think about it this way, Jinwoo is leveling up. And something I've always kept in the back of my mind is he's leveling up because the system is allowing him to. Could the system not just take away all his powers and send him straight back to E? Is that something it could do? Because all the levels and all the skills and everything he's been given. Even though he's earned it, he's been allowed to earn it when no one else has. And is there a way to like factory reset him? And that's always like a thing I've had in the back of my mind. What is the story with the system? What does it want from Jinwoo? And how is that relationship going to unfold? That's something I'm always thinking about. Anyway, I guess that's where my reaction ends. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please go check out AniNews' video, of course. AniNews is the whole reason I'm even making these videos, so go support AniNews. Link to the video is in the description. And if you liked my reaction, please press the like button and the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself an amazing day, and as always, my friends, you will see me in